I want to speak to you tonight not about striving, not about effort, not about the grinding forward motion that the world calls ambition. I want to speak to you about something far more ancient, far more powerful, and far more personal than anything the outer world has ever offered you. I want to speak to you about the truth of what you are, and of what, in this very moment, you are so close to fully remembering. You have been on a journey. Perhaps you do not even know how long. Perhaps it has felt like years of reaching, of visualizing, of speaking affirmations into silent rooms and wondering if anything is listening. Perhaps there have been mornings when the mirror showed you a face that did not yet match the self you know yourself to be. And in those mornings, the old doubt would creep in, quiet, familiar, persistent whispering that maybe this is all fantasy, that maybe you are fooling yourself, that maybe the world is simply fixed and you are simply you, and that is simply that. I am here to tell you that whisper is a lie, not a small lie, the grandest lie that consciousness ever told itself. You do not get what you want, you get what you assume to be true, and the distance between where you stand and where you long to be is not made of time or circumstance or the opinions of others. It is made only of assumption. Hear me carefully now, because this is the heart of everything. Consciousness is the only reality, not partially, not philosophically, literally. The world you see around you, every face, every condition, every closed door and open opportunity, is nothing more than the outpicturing of states of consciousness that have been assumed and sustained within you. The outer world has no independent existence. It is a screen, faithful and obedient, upon which your inner assumptions cast their image. And it literally cannot show you anything that you have not first, in some form, entertained within. This is not mysticism for its own sake. This is the most practical truth you will ever encounter. Because if the world is a mirror, then you are not a victim of it. You are its author. And if you are its author, then whatever appears upon that screen that you do not prefer can be changed, not by petitioning the world, not by fighting circumstance, not by laboring harder against what is, but by going within, quietly, deliberately, and assuming the state of the wish already fulfilled. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Genesis 1:3. That is the pattern. Not God labored to make light. Not God tried persistently and eventually achieved light after many setbacks. God spoke, which is to say, God assumed, and it was. The same power lives in you. It has always lived in you. Imagination is God, and imagination is yours. It is not borrowed. It is not rationed out to the more deserving. It is the very substance of what you are, the living core of your being, and it creates without ceasing every moment of every day, conforming the world, your world, to whatever you most deeply, most persistently, most feelingly assume to be real. The question then is never whether imagination is working. It is always working. The only question is, what are you imagining? What are you assuming? What is the inner conversation you are holding about yourself, about your life, about what is possible for you, about who you are? If you are imagining from a state of lack, lack will appear before you, wearing 1,000 different faces. If you are imagining from the state of the wish fulfilled truly bodily, feelingly dwelling in that state as though it were already so, then the whole of the world must rearrange itself to confirm your assumption. This is not the law of attraction, as the world has watered it down to mean. This is not positive thinking, layered over a fearful heart. This is something far more radical. This is the law of assumption, and it operates with the mathematical precision of gravity. It does not reward the most spiritual, the most deserving, the most disciplined. It simply reflects. It simply confirms. It says, in its ancient, wordless way, as within, so without, always, without exception. Now here is where most people, on the very threshold of their transformation, make the single error that keeps the door just barely closed. They have learned the principle. They have practiced the visualization. They have spoken the inner word, seen the inner scene, felt the inner joy, and then they have waited. And while waiting, they have watched the outer world and seen it not yet changed. And in seeing it not yet changed, they have quietly, unconsciously, slipped back into the old state. Back into the self that doubts, the self that monitors, the self that needs evidence before it will fully believe. And so the evidence does not come. Not because the law failed, but because the state was not fully held. You cannot be in two states at once. You cannot serve both the assumption of the wish fulfilled and the observation of its apparent absence. The moment you look out at the world for confirmation, you are no longer standing in the state, you are standing outside it, watching for it. And the law, faithful as it is, gives you more of what you are standing in, the watching, the waiting, the not yet having. No man can serve two masters. Matthew 6:24. This is what Scripture means. Not two gods, not two religions, two states of consciousness, two internal postures, two ways of being in your own mind, the one who knows he already has and the one who fears he does not. You cannot hold both. You must choose one, not once, in a grand dramatic moment of decision, but in the quiet, unremarkable flow of your ordinary hours, moment by moment, returning always to the state of the one who already is, already has, already knows. I want to speak to you now about the old man. Scripture calls it the old man and tells you to put him off, not to fight him, not to condemn him, not to spend your energy in furious argument with the self you used to be. Simply to put him off, to lay him down like a garment that no longer fits. The old man is the collection of assumptions you have held about yourself for years, perhaps for a lifetime. That you are not quite enough, that what you want is reserved for others, that your past is a kind of sentence, a weight you must carry forward into every tomorrow, that the circumstances of your origin, your history, your mistakes are permanent features of your identity. They are not. They are states. And a state is something you enter and something you can leave. The past has no reality unless you continue to occupy it. The failure of last year is alive in your present only because you keep returning to it in consciousness, rehearsing it, refeeling it, granting it the power of present tense reality. But the moment you cease to occupy that state, it is as though it never was. Consciousness is the only reality. And if you withdraw your consciousness from a state, that state ceases to be real in any meaningful sense of the word. Creation is finished. This is one of the most liberating truths I can offer you. The version of you that you long to be already exists. The life you imagine already exists. Not in some distant future that must be built brick by brick. It exists now, complete, whole, and perfect, in the infinite space of states that consciousness can occupy. Your work is not to create it. Your work is to select it. To move in imagination, in feeling, in the inner posture of your being into that state, and to dwell there with such completeness that it becomes your natural assumption about yourself. When that happens, when the state hardens into bedrock conviction, the outer world has no choice but to conform. It is the iron law of consciousness. The without must mirror the within. It cannot do otherwise. It has never done otherwise. It will never do otherwise. Now I want you to understand something about feeling, because this is where the principle either ignites or remains a cold intellectual exercise. Feeling is the secret, not emotion in its turbulent, reactive sense, not the performed joy of someone convincing themselves. I mean the deep, settled, quiet feeling of truth known in the body. The feeling of one who has received the news they most hoped for, and who now rests in the warm aftermath of that receiving. You know that feeling. You have felt it before. Perhaps for small things, a phone call you had been hoping for, a letter arriving, a moment of unexpected good fortune. There was a particular quality to that feeling, a relaxing, an opening, a sense of rightness, as though the world had slotted into the arrangement that it always should have had. That feeling is not the result of the good news. That feeling is the substance of creation. When you can generate that feeling not in response to the outer world, but in advance of it, in imagination, about the thing you most deeply desire, and when you can sustain that feeling as your natural inner climate, you have done everything. You have completed your work. The rest is simply the outer world catching up to the inner fact. What things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11, 4 October. Believe that ye receive them, present tense. Not believe that you will receive them. Not believe that if you are good enough and persistent enough, they may one day come to you. Believe now that ye receive them. The whole prayer is answered the moment the inner state shifts from wanting to having. The moment you move from the consciousness of the one who seeks to the consciousness of the one who has found. And now I want to speak directly to those of you who are close, because I know you are close. I know it because you would not be here, listening, leaning in, if you were not. The one who is far from this truth does not hunger for it this way. The hunger itself is the sign of proximity. You do not intensely desire what is entirely foreign to you. You desire what is close to you, close to your nature, close to your state, close to your becoming. The desire itself is evidence of the existence of the thing desired, and it is evidence of your readiness to inhabit the state in which that desire is satisfied. But I want you to understand something about this closeness. When you are close, truly close to a transformation in consciousness, the old state will often become louder. This is not a sign that it is growing more powerful. It is the opposite. It is the old state's last voice. When a pattern is about to dissolve, when an assumption that has shaped your world for years is about to be permanently replaced by a new one, the evidence in the outer world may seem to briefly amplify in the wrong direction. The situation may look worse before the shift makes itself visible. The finances may seem more strained. The relationship may seem more strained. The body may seem more insistent in its symptoms. Do not be moved by this. Do not interpret it as failure. This is simply the outer world completing its correspondence to the state you are leaving. It is the old state expressing itself fully one last time before consciousness moves on and the world has no choice but to follow. Please keep going. You are so close. The bridge of incident, the sequence of events, encounters, circumstances, and opportunities that will carry your desire from the inner to the outer is already being constructed in ways you cannot see and do not need to see. You do not know how it will happen. You do not need to know. In fact, the need to know how is itself a subtle form of disbelief, a quiet insistence that you must manage and monitor the process, which implies that the process might fail without your management. Let it go. Your only work is the inner state. Your only responsibility is the assumption. The how is not your province. The how belongs to the infinite intelligence that moves all things into alignment when consciousness has settled into a new home. Think of sleep. Every night you surrender. You do not manage the world while you sleep. You do not supervise your heartbeat or negotiate with your immune system or oversee the maintenance of your cells. You simply let go into unconsciousness, and the whole of life tends to itself. The law of assumption asks for something similar, a surrender of the management, a release of the monitoring, a willingness to fall into the new state as naturally as you fall into sleep. trusting that the world will do what the world has always done, confirm whatever is most fundamentally assumed within. I want to address now the question of the former state, because this is where many stumble in a particularly poignant way. They have moved in imagination into the new state. They have felt the feeling of the wish fulfilled. They have inhabited, however briefly, the consciousness of the person they intend to be. And then they look down and they see the former self still standing there, the evidence of the old state still arranged around them, and they feel a kind of grief, a pity for the old self, a guilt sometimes, as though leaving the old state is a form of abandonment. But you must understand, the old self is not a person, it is a state, and states have no feelings that can be hurt. You do not owe loyalty to a state of lack. You do not honor suffering by agreeing to continue suffering. There is nothing noble in maintaining an assumption that diminishes you. The only genuine gift you can give to anyone in your life, to the people who love you, to the world at large, is to become the fullest, freest, most realized version of yourself. And that requires that you release the old man, that you stop paying him visits, that you stop telling his story as though it is still your story. Your story, your real story, is not what has happened to you. Your story is what you are assuming to be true about you right now, in this moment, in the privacy of your own mind. And that story can change. It can change in an instant, not gradually, not through a long rehabilitation of the self. In an instant, in the space of a single decision of consciousness to occupy a different state, everything that ever was can become simply the former things that shall not be remembered, nor come into mind, as Scripture says. The past is not a wall. It is not even a path. It is simply what was imagined before you imagined differently. Behold, I make all things new. Revelation 21:5. All things new. Not improved things. Not things gradually repaired. New. That is the power of consciousness shifting its state. Nothing carries over that you do not carry. The new state comes with its own history, its own logic, its own set of confirming facts, and the world rushes to supply them, because the world has no other function than to supply what consciousness demands. Now, I want to speak about identity, because identity is the operant power here more than any technique, any visualization method, any affirmation practice. It is not what you say about yourself that determines your experience. It is what you are. And what you are is what you most fundamentally assume yourself to be in the quiet of your own being, below the level of deliberate thought, in the deep water of your basic self-concept. If, at that deep level, you assume yourself to be the kind of person to whom certain good things simply do not come, no surface affirmation will override it. If, at that deep level, you assume yourself to be someone who is perpetually almost there, but never quite arrived, the world will confirm it with exquisite faithfulness. Every affirmation, every vision board, every technique applied on top of a contrary self-concept is like painting beautiful colors on a wall that is structurally unsound. The structure must change. And the structure changes not through force, but through being, through choosing deliberately and repeatedly to be the one who already is, not to become, not to eventually achieve, to be now in this body, in this ordinary day, in the middle of circumstances that may not yet reflect it. To speak from that identity, to think from that identity, to move through the world with the settled, unhurried confidence of one for whom the thing is already done because inwardly it is. The man who knows he is loved moves differently through a room than the man who hopes to be loved. The woman who knows she is abundant makes different choices, holds different conversations, meets different eyes than the woman who fears there will not be enough. The inner state is always leaking outward, always. In 1,000 imperceptible ways, the world reads your self-assumption and responds in kind. So the work, if we must call it work, though it is really the most natural thing, is to align the deep assumption with the desired state and then to hold it. Not to grasp it anxiously. To hold it the way you hold a sleeping child, with tenderness, with certainty, without squeezing, knowing that it is real and safe and yours. Let me tell you what I have seen. Not in others, though I have seen it in others, but in the pattern of this law as it operates without exception across every life it touches. I have seen people whose outer circumstances were utterly, comprehensively contrary to what they desired. I have seen poverty that seemed structural, illness that seemed permanent, relationships so broken they seemed irreparable. And I have seen in every one of these cases, without exception, that when the inner assumption genuinely shifted, when the consciousness of the person moved from the state of the problem to the state of the solution, the outer world rearranged, not always in the way expected, not always through the door anticipated, but it rearranged. The bridge of incident appeared, the circumstance shifted, the body responded, the relationship found its opening. Not because the world is magic in some frivolous sense, because the world is mind, because consciousness precedes experience always and in all things, because you have never, not once in your life, experienced anything that did not begin as an assumption held within you. Not once. There are no exceptions to this law. There are only people who have not yet recognized it operating in their lives. I said you are close. I want to tell you why I know this with such certainty. Because the fact that these words are reaching you, the fact that something in you responds to them, not as new information, but as recognition, as memory, as the quiet sense of yes. I have always known, this tells me, that your consciousness is already at the threshold. The door is not distant. You are standing at it. Your hand is on the handle. The only thing left to do is to enter. And entering means nothing dramatic. It means settling into the state of the wish fulfilled with such completeness, such naturalness, such undefended ease, that you stop checking whether the door is opening and simply find yourself somehow already on the other side. It means taking your attention off the evidence of the former state truly, not as a discipline, but as a natural consequence of being so fully absorbed in the new state that the former one simply ceases to hold your interest. Think of a man who receives word that he has won something extraordinary, a fortune, a position, a love returned. In the first moments after receiving that news, does he monitor the outer world anxiously for confirmation? Does he check repeatedly to make sure it is still true? No, he simply knows. And from that knowing, a naturalness flows. He calls the people he loves. He makes the decisions the new reality calls for. He moves not strenuously, not performatively, but from the inside, from the settled certainty of one whose world has changed. That is the state. That is what you are choosing now. That is what, in choosing, you make real. Assumption hardens into fact. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanism of creation itself. The assumption you sustain the state you inhabit long enough and deeply enough to feel natural crystallizes into the physical world with the same inevitability that water crystallizes into ice when the temperature is right. You do not have to force the crystallization. You do not have to manage it or accelerate it or worry about whether it is happening at the correct rate. You simply have to keep the temperature right. You simply have to maintain the state. And the outer world, with its infinite creative intelligence, will form itself around you precisely as your assumption demands. Now I want to offer you something very specific, a practice, if you will, though I prefer to call it simply a return to the truth of what you are. Tonight, before you sleep, I want you to close your eyes and find the scene that would imply the wish fulfilled. Not the wish itself, not the thing you want, the scene that would make sense only if the wish were already yours. The handshake, the phone call, the view from the window of the new home, the feeling of the body restored, the ordinary Tuesday afternoon of the life you intend. Find that scene, step into it, not as an observer watching it from outside, as the one living it from within, seeing what that version of you would see, feeling what that version of you would feel, breathing the air of that life as though it were the only air there is. And then, holding that feeling, allow yourself to drift towards sleep. Because in that threshold between waking and sleeping, that soft, impressionable state, the ancients called the hypnagogic, the subconscious mind receives what the conscious mind presents to it with unusual directness, unusual depth. The seed planted there in feeling roots immediately into the deep soil of the self and begins its invisible growth. Do this with faith, not the faith of one who is uncertain but hopes, the faith of one who understands the law. The faith of a farmer who has planted seeds in good soil in the right season, who does not dig them up each morning to check their progress, but who knows, with the calm certainty of experience and knowledge, that what is planted in good ground must grow. That is the quality of faith you are being asked for. Not desperate faith, not straining faith, the quiet, settled, untroubled faith of one who understands how things work, and then go to sleep and wake up as the new person. Not dramatically, not with announcement. Simply wake up as one for whom it is already done. Make your coffee as that person. Move through your morning as that person. Speak to the people in your life from the perspective of that person. You do not need to explain this to anyone. You do not need to announce a transformation. Simply be. Simply live from the inside of the new state, and trust with every fiber of the intelligence that you are that the outside will follow. Because it will, because it must, because the law is not a sometimes law. It is not a law that works for some and not others, that favors the advanced practitioner over the beginner, that rewards the spiritually sophisticated and ignores the newcomer. It is a law like gravity. It works for everyone who works with it. It works against everyone who works against it. And working with it means simply, entirely, only aligning the inner assumption with the desired experience, and holding that alignment with feeling, with conviction, with the naturalness of truth known rather than hoped. I am that I am. Exodus 3, Pais Presece. These words, the most sacred in all of Scripture, the name that God speaks of itself, are the key to everything I have said tonight. I am. Not I will be. Not I hope to be. Not I am trying to become. I am. The present tense is not accidental. It is the entire teaching. Whatever you attach to I am, whatever you declare yourself to be, in the quiet naming of your own consciousness, is what you are, and therefore what the world reflects back to you. I am limited. I am struggling. I am not yet there. These are not descriptions of reality. They are creative declarations that the universe treats as instructions. And so is this. I am whole. I am the one who has what I desire. I am already the person I intend to be. I am living the life that is already mine. Speak these not as affirmations that need to overcome resistance, but as truth stated by the very consciousness that creates the world, because that is what you are. You are the I am. You are the creative power. You have never been anything less. The journey you have been on, the years of seeking, the practices, the persistence, the nights of doubt and the mornings of renewed hope, has not been wasted. Nothing in consciousness is wasted. Every visualization, every moment of genuine inner feeling, every instant in which you chose the state of the wish over the state of the lack, all of it has been accumulating, like water rising behind a dam, pressing forward, pressing upward, waiting for the moment when the pressure reaches the threshold and everything flows freely into the new landscape. That moment is close. Do not release the state now. Do not, in this very moment of proximity, withdraw back into the old assumption, because the evidence has not yet fully appeared. This is the moment, precisely this moment of near arrival, when the sustained state matters most, when holding your ground in consciousness is the entire work, when the refusal to be moved by appearances is the one thing standing between where you are and where you know yourself to be. Please keep going. Not because you need to strive harder, not because you need to do more. Keep going in the sense of continuing to be, continuing to inhabit the state, continuing to assume, with the calm authority of one who knows the law, that it is done, that it is real, that the life you have seen in imagination is as real as the chair beneath you, as real as the air in your lungs, as real as the heartbeat you feel right now without even trying. Because it is. Imagination is not fantasy. Imagination is the only reality there is. The physical world is the shadow. The imaginal world is the substance. You have been practicing substance. You have been building in the only dimension that actually creates anything. And the shadow, the physical, visible, tangible world is simply catching up to the substance you have already established within. I want to close tonight with this. There are people listening who have held a desire for a very long time, so long that the desire itself has begun to feel like a kind of pain. The longing has outlasted the easy hope of the early days. The visualization has become sometimes a reminder of what is not yet here rather than a direct experience of what already is. I want to speak to those people with particular care. The duration of the desire is not evidence of its impossibility. It is not evidence that you have done something wrong. It is simply evidence that the state has not yet been fully inhabited, that somewhere in the consciousness, the assumption of the wish fulfilled is still being held alongside the awareness of the lack, and the two are canceling each other. The solution is not to try harder. The solution is to go deeper into the state, to find beneath the desire the feeling of the thing itself, to stop wanting it and start being it, to stop reaching and start resting in the fullness of the state already occupied. The rest is done. The rest has always been done. All things were finished from the foundation of the world. You are not creating anything new. You are selecting. You are moving into what already is. And when you do, when the selection is made completely, when the state is occupied without reservation, without the exit clause of doubt, without the footnote of, unless it doesn't work, the world will come to meet you. It always does. It cannot do otherwise. It is made of the same substance as the inner world, and it must confirm whatever the inner world declares. You are so close. You have always been this close. The truth is that you have never been anywhere else. You have simply been standing, at times, with your back to the door, looking at the evidence of the room you are in, and concluding that the door must therefore not exist. Turn around. The door is there. It was always there. It is open. It has always been open. And you, the real you, the I am that you are, the consciousness that is the only reality you have always had, the only key there is assumption, sustained in feeling until it hardens into the facts of your world. Enter the state. Hold the feeling. Live from the inside of what you know to be true. And do not be moved, not by appearance, not by time, not by the whispers of the old man who would call you back to his familiar, diminished country. You do not live there anymore. You have moved. You are new. And the new world is already organizing itself around your new self in ways both visible and invisible, both intimate and vast, both immediate and unfolding, all of it moving toward you with the unstoppable certainty of a tide that does not know how to be otherwise. You are so close. Please keep going, not in effort, in being, in the quiet, unshakable, illuminated being of one who already knows. It is done. This is Neville Lectures. I'll see you again in the next video.